Hello and welcome to this Unreal Engine swimming tutorial. The processes that we cover in this video today will work with Unreal Engine 5.5, 5.6 and 5.7 and will more than likely work with a few older versions of the engine. Now, I get asked, why have a swimming mechanic in a game? That's because it will add volume to any game you may be working on at the moment, whether it's a project or just some sort of trial, some prototyping. However, in the vast expanse of game design, the inclusion of a swimming mechanic not only expands the horizon of gameplay, but it also delves into uncharted depths of immersion. By integrating swimming mechanics, game worlds become boundless oceans teeming with exploration opportunities. Imagine traversing expansive bodies of water, uncovering hidden treasures beneath the waves, or embarking on epic underwater quests. The addition of a swimming mechanic introduces a dynamic dimension to the gameplay, enabling players to access locations that would otherwise be unreachable. Now let's dive right into the engine, pun intended, and get started. I'll see you there. So here we are in Engine. All I've done was I created a blank project. So when you fire up your engine through Epic Games Launcher, select blank project. I've named this particular one Water Tutorial. You can call it whatever your game is, project is called, that sort of stuff. But the one thing that I want to do straight off the bat is to go into my little drop down here for performance and scalability. And under viewport scalability, I'm just going to make sure that I've set it to high, just so throughout the process of this tutorial, I'm not running into any sort of resource sort of issues. So now that I've done that, before I do anything else, I want to set up our water body plugin. Now, all you have to do is come up to the edit menu at the top of our screen, come down to plugins, and we'll get our plugins tab open up. We're going to search for water at the top, and I'm just going to enable this water feature here. It's experimental. However, Epic Games is doing a pretty good job with it so far. Maybe we should hopefully see it become development or deployment ready at some point in the near future. So I'm just going to click on yes about the experimental thing. I'm going to restart my project. Alrighty, so now with the magic of editing, I have skipped forward a couple of minutes. My engine's restarted. I'm back in my project that I've started up before, and it's done a couple of different bits and pieces just there. Now, I just want to check to make sure nothing else is open up, and there is. I now have a message log here about collision profile settings do not include an entry for the water body collision profile. Now, this was supposed to have no longer come up when you've got a 5.6 project. However, here we are in 5.6 and it's still coming up. So just for the sake of um, being efficient, I'm just going to click on add entry to default engine INI. And this will come apparent in a couple of minutes when we start mucking around with the water body collision preset. So I'm just going to click on that. And that's all you have to do. I'm just going to go clear, and that shouldn't be a problem from this point forward. Now, all I'm going to do, I'm going to start a new level. So let's, before we get too further, sort of come up with a nice sort of um, file structure to sort of start with. Having a good file structure, even naming conventions is a very important project hygiene, if you will. So I'm just going to create a new folder here. You can right click and you can find a new folder in that little list there, or click on the add button. I'm just going to use a typical Windows Explorer shortcut, which is Control Shift N. I'll get a new folder. I'm going to call this levels. Now I'm just going to use my enter key to go into that level, and then right click, that level folder rather, sorry. Right click, and then in here, I'm just going to click on level, and we're going to create a new world. Now I'm just going to call this island underscore world. Now this is because I'm just going to use a ocean water body for this particular tutorial. And as you can see, this little asterisk that pops up means that it has unsaved assets. So that's okay, we can fix that when we go in and we can make some changes and save it. So I'm just going to double click on that. I'm going to save selected, and then we'll go to our blank level. We won't have anything here at all. And again, for the purpose of a little bit of project hygiene, I'm just going to come up to our edit menu, come down to project settings, and under project settings, we have maps and modes. Now in here, we can change these settings to show which map would load when you open the project in the editor, and also what the default game map is when you first start your game, if you're launching it from a built project or even to the platform section. So I'm just going to change these to my island. I'm just going to search for it. I've got island world here. Search for island there. Now, if you were creating your own project, you'd probably at the point that you would probably make your default game map your main menu that should come up before you start a game. Because let's face it, which games have you played recently that just dump you straight in the game world without some sort of intro process or menu system? Now that's done, we're just going to come back to here and we need to start building our world. So for that, we need to come into window, come down to environment light mixer, or ENV for short. Click on that and we can here add all of our different light settings. So I'm going to create a skylight, create directional light, atmosphere, volumetric cloud, and if you want to add some sort of height fog, you can do that here as well. And before you change that sort of stuff, you can also change the little settings in here before you do it. But anyway, I'm going to click off that. On the right, I'm going to come up to outliner, and again, in the interest of having some sort of project hygiene, I'm going to create a new folder called lighting. So eventually when my project gets that big, I can actually find these lighting settings relatively easily. So I'm just going to highlight and select all of those options, all those environment light mixes I've just added. I'm going to click and drag it into my lighting folder. And you can now see there under my lighting folder. So just a nice little tip right there. Now, next thing that we need to do is, because we don't have any sort of landscape happening here, we're going to come up to our drop down and I'm going to select landscape. I'm not going to do any landscaping in this particular tutorial. Maybe another one down the track we might be able to do that, but essentially, in essence, it's exactly the same as you would if you were wanting to sculpt some sort of stuff, so some of this sort of things out. So I'm just going to make sure that I've got enable edit layers ticked. I'm going to go create. It'll do its thing. And at some point, I'll get my landscaper pop up. Now, I'm not going to be using any materials or anything for this. If you're looking for materials, you can always jump into Fab and maybe grab some sand or some of the auto materials. But for the moment, this is purely about water and swimming. So again, I'm going to come up to my quickly add to the project button. And in my little search bar, I'm just going to start typing in water. Now it'll give me all the different water bodies that is currently a part of the water plugin. And all I'm going to use is the ocean one here. So I'm going to click and drag it into my world. We'll get this little message about insert new landscape edit layer. So this is 5.6 plus. So throughout the tutorial, I'll probably mention 5.6 plus. If you're prior to that, these sort of things probably won't happen or shouldn't happen. If you are 5.6 and later, you'll see these type of things pop up. Now, we can already see that water is above the layer, which is good. Basically, what we need to do is make sure that our water layer is above any sort of landscaping layers. This will prevent changes to the landscape height map from being directly affected by the water. I'm just going to click on complete and my water starts loading in. Now, if you haven't done anything with water in a recent project, you may find that it might need to do some compiling and stuff like that. Just give it a little bit of time and it will eventually show up on your screen. Now, we have a little bit of a small island here. all I want to do is sort of scroll out, and you can see that it's all based upon splines. Now, if I want to, I can reposition this island within my level. However, I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to make the island a bit small. I'm going to select these little nodes on the spline and just drag them in to make the island just a wee bit smaller. You can also add a bit of curvature to it by grabbing these little bendy nodes and basically just shape out your island to your requirements, sort of thing. It didn't like me clicking off that. Sometimes you may need to jump in the outliner and select it from the outliner if you misclick, or it doesn't register a click. So we've got a little thing there. Now, one thing we haven't done is we don't really have any game modes set up or any sort of character blueprints. To save a little bit of time on this particular video, I'm not going to go creating one from scratch. I'm going to quickly jump into my content drawer. Under content with content selector, sorry, I'm going to click on add, add feature or content pack. And I'm just going to select third person for this particular. I'm going to add a project. You could add a first person or the top down, whatever your project is really chasing. It's up to you. I'm just going to cross that off. Close our content browser. And I'm just going to let them import the different changes. Go import. Once it's finished its thing, we now should have a third person folder in our characters, third person folder in our content folder, including characters and input, which is quite helpful. One thing we do have to do before we can actually utilize our third person character is come under outliner, click on our level. Now under world settings, where it says game mode override, we're just going to select BP third person game mode. So now when we right click, play from here. Now you can see that we're in our third person character. If we run over here and run towards our water, probably should have right clicked a bit closer to the water. When we run onto it, you can sort of see that we can't really swim. We just run across the top of the water. Now that's because we haven't set up the water body collision to tell it how to work. So I made a bit of a comment there earlier regarding water body collisions and the default engine I. Now, so to be able to do that, if I'm just going to come out a little bit, make sure our water body selected under details, physics. The wrong thing selected. I had the landscape selected. So make sure your water body ocean is selected under physics. We have this collision preset custom. Click on that and come down and click on water body collision. Now, if you're not seeing water body collision, you probably might need to go back and check your error logs and click on that little entry that says add entry to default I that I did earlier on in the tutorial. Now, if we come back and we go play from here, be close to the water this time, mind a bit of choppiness, I'm going to run to the water. You can see that we're running into the water itself now. However, we can't swim. That's what we're going to be working on next. Now, we need to start doing some changes to our third-person character blueprint that we've just imported. So open up your content drawer, find the third-person folder, and under blueprints, we'll have a BP third-person character. Double-click on him, it'll open up. I'm just going to drag it from our screen and add the tab to the main window. You can see we have a couple of little input options already in our event graph. So we need to set up a couple of custom events. Now those two custom events are going to be called StartSwimming and StopSwimming, and it's going to tie into the existing character movement mode function that is in Unreal Engine. Now again, this will be a little different if you're on an earlier version of Unreal Engine. You're not going to have this move component. However, that's okay. I'll show you how to put it in there anyway. So I'm first of all going to create those custom events. I'm going to right click, search for custom event, and this one will be start. Move my mouse cursor there so you can see where I'm typing. And the other one, again, right click custom event. And this one's going to be stop swimming. Move my mouse so you can see what I type. Now, from this point, we're going to come across our components pane here, grab our character movement, and drag it in. From here, we're going to get physical volume, or physics volume, sorry, get physics volume, should be under the movement section. And this is where we're starting to tie into the existing swimming sort of stuff that's already built into your character. So from this, we are going to get water volume, and we're going to set it. And from our start swimming, we're going to link that in, and we're going to tick water volume. Okay. Next step is we're going to create a variable, and we're going to call it is swimming. So this particular variable is going to be a boolean. We all know booleans are true or they are false. So I'm going to set it. I'm going to hold down Alt, drop him in there. A little bit of a shortcut there for you. And I'm going to tick that to be true. Now, from our is swimming boolean set, drag off here, and we're going to set movement mode. Character movement, this one here. I'm just going to make this a bit nicer looking. Oh, yeah, this can come down here. I'm going to change new movement mode to swimming. Now, before we go too much further, we are going to copy and paste all of this. Copy and grab, paste this one. And do the exact opposite when we stop swimming. So I'm just going to use the one character movement here, link it into get physics volume, and untick these two tick boxes for the boolean values. And then we're going to change our new mode back to walking. So essentially what we're seeing here is when we start swimming, we want to detect that the physics volume is a water volume. And if it is, then we're going to start swimming, setting our movement mode to swimming. If it's not, well, if we stop swimming, then turn it all off and we go back to walking. So any good project hygiene has good comments. So we're going to comment this one out to determine if swimming or not. All right, so next steps are to start modifying the existing movement input. Now, I'm only going to do this for the IA move. I'm just going to make some space here. If you're wanting to do with some gamepad, same sort of principles apply for this one. Just going to move him down just a little bit. I'm going to move him over here just to make some space. Now again, if you're on a older version, so 5.5, 5.4 sort of stuff, this is going to look a little bit different than what you were seeing in the video. The rest of it's pretty much the same. So again, I'm going to grab our character movement, drag him in here, drop him there. And from it, I'm going to search for get movement mode. So movement mode, and it's the one here with the little green enum sort of value there. I might sort of zoom in just a little bit so you can see it a little bit better. And from that helpful little movement mode, drag out, I'm going to go switch on E movement mode. Now we'll get this guy here, and it directly relates to our movement mode function that we used earlier. So for the moment, I'm just going to drop him down so I can see what's going on. And from our IA move triggered, patch him into the E movement mode. And connect walking to the move function that was originally there. Now I'm just going to double click this guy and add a little reroute node, or whatever you'd like to call it, whether you're reshaping your wiring and stuff like that. And I'm just going to double adapt falling into that. Pretty straightforward. Again, if you are on an earlier version, then use the same function, but you will have a add movement input node here. And just for the sake of that, I'm just going to show you what that looks like, because we're going to use that for our swimming rather than calling this movement function, just so we can sort of show both ways of doing it. So first of all, I'm going to right click. I'm going to go add movement input. Okay. From another blank space, I'm going to get control rotation. Sorry, just clearing my throat there a little bit. And then I'm going to get forward vector. Do apologize. I've been too well the past couple of days, so please bear with me as we get through this tutorial. I'm just going to make it look a bit nicer. Now from swimming, we're going to connect this to our add input, add movement input, and then up here where we have the action value Y, we're just going to connect that into our scale value. So again, I'm just going to add some reroute nodes here just to make it look a bit more nicer, easier to figure out what's going on. And that's our movement system done and dusted. Now, if you were to go and jump in literally into the water, nothing's still going to happen, because we need to do a overlap system. We need to detect basically when we're going in and out of the water body. So if we jump back to our island world map and try to maybe move your camera so you're not under the water, so you can just verify that you have water body selected. Again, I've just clicked off that, and I can verify just by checking it in the outliner that I've got it selected. The reason why I want to do that is because I want to come into details, and under details, I'm going to turn this into a blueprint. Now, some 5.6 plus, this is 5.61. 5.7 might be slightly different. I did hear that the button is now labeled create blueprint from this rather than convert the actor. However, I'm just going to make sure water body ocean is selected. Click on the little blueprint button here at the top, and I'll get this create blueprint from selection. Now you can rename it to your heart's content. That's really up to yourself. For now, for purposes of this particular tutorial, I'm just going to leave it as such. I'm going to go select. Now Unreal will fire it up and give it to us straight away. All I'm going to do is come straight into our event graph, and I'm going to remove this event tick. It's also helpful, or rather helpful, that we've already got an event begin overlap function here. So I'm just going to add the one that we don't have, and that particular one is actor begin end overlap. End overlap. And we're just going to cast to our third person character. So from our begin overlap, cast to third person character. That's this guy here. Do not forget to connect your other actor to the object, otherwise it will not work. From as third person character drag out, we're going to get our function that we create, a custom event rather, we called before StartSwimming. So when we begin overlap with the water body, we're going to start swimming. When we end overlap, same thing. We're going to cast to third person character to the object. And then we're going to, instead of start swimming, I'm going to call the stop swimming function that we had before. So once you've got that done, little bit of housekeeping, if you will, while we're here. So we're going to change a collision value. If we leave this step out, basically when our feet touch the water, we're going to transition into our swimming animation in midair. And look, this could very well ruin the immersion of your game. So again, we're here. We might as well change it now. So make sure that we select our parent water body here. And then on the opposite side under details, we're going to look for offset. And coming down under the collision section, we have collision height offset. Now, I'm going to change this value to -70. That's just me. You may want to change that to your liking. Give it a go. See which one works better for you. Just going to go pile. Save that off. So once that's done, you're going to go back. We're going to test it out. However, you'll notice that our water has disappeared. Where did it go? No, it didn't drain away. If we grab one of the little adjustment nodes on the spline of the water and slightly move it, our water will bounce back. It's been that way for a couple of versions now. But if we, again, play from here, and when we sort of go into the water, just waiting for it to see if it would come back, you can sort of see that I can now, with my mouse cursor, change the direction of where I'm moving to. I can move up and down. However, if I stop, we sort of slide, and we don't really stop very quickly. How about we fix that? Because when was the last time you went swimming and you stopped paddling and you just kept moving under your own inertia? Probably do for a little bit, but not that distance. So let's jump into our third person character. And on our left under character movement, we can fix that up. So select character movement, come across to our detail section and search for swimming. These are basically all of our movement settings for swimming. And you can see that our max swim speed is 300 centimeters a second. That's not too bad. I'm quite happy with that. However, I want to change our braking deceleration swimming. I'm just going to make it 150. Compile, save, and we can go back and test that. I'm going to, while I'm here, I'm just going to Control-Shift S to save it off. And to stop a little bit of the stuttering, I might just quickly change that scalability down to medium. See if that helps me out with that. So play from here. Now, when I run into the water, you can see that when I stop moving, I don't slide as far. So a little bit of a nice feature to add to your game to make it a bit more immersive, a bit more realistic. Alrighty, so now that we've got a lot of the core mechanical sort of side out of the way, how about we start making it a bit more stylized? So rather than the function, let's go looking at some of the form side of things. Now, we need a couple of animations to do that. And if you're watching this particular video on my YouTube channel, check the description because I have supplied a couple of animations. Either it'll be a link to my website where I've probably provided a written version of this particular tutorial if you want to follow along. So again, that old project hygiene, let's keep a good file structure happening. I'm going to right click this time, go new folder. I'm going to type in animations. Inside animations, Control-Shift N is for a different way of doing it. A couple of different ways wouldn't hurt. May make your project go a little bit faster if you follow it. And we're just going to call it swimming. Now I'm just going to jump outside of my cursor's view and grab those two animations, starting with swimming. Drop them into that folder. Now, when you get import content, I'm just going to say scroll down, find skeleton. And we're just going to go with SK Mannequin because we're using animations from Mixer Mode retargeted to the UE5 skeleton. as well as our third person character template. So I'm going to import him. And if we look in there, we can see we have a swimming mechanic. I'm also going to grab a treading water animation. Now, this one's a little bit different. Again, make sure you select the correct skeleton. If you're using a different skeleton or different animations, you'd select the right ones for your purposes. However, after 5.5, they've changed some of the animation settings. You used to be able to go into the animation and change the translation, so basically where the animation plays on the skeleton. In this particular 5.6 and above, they have another function that we can call for called snap to closest, if I type that correctly, snap to closest frame boundary. So if you're on 5.6 or later, make sure you search that. It does sort of help with the animation purposes, and essentially what it's doing is making sure the treading water animation doesn't play if you're at a certain height to the water body. If you are in 5.5, maybe jump onto the link to the tutorial on my website, because you will be able to follow a couple of steps on how to change the translation of that particular animation. Alrighty, so next things first, we're going to create an animation blend space. And because it is not directional, it's just one-dimensional, we're just going to use the legacy 1D blend space. So right click, go to animations, down to legacy and select blend space 1D. Make sure you click selecting the correct skeleton. Again, for us for this tutorial, using SK Mannequin. And I'm just going to use a good naming convention here. So ABS for animated blend space, underscore, and then the purpose of that blend space is swimming. Now double click on that, it'll fire up. And before we start adding our animations to our blend space, I just want to do a little bit of housekeeping by changing our horizontal axis here, naming it speed. And our maximum axis value is 300. And we're going to change our grid divisions to 2. Snap grid is good. You can change the smoothing time if you so wish. I might just put in 0.2. Might make it just a little bit nicer. And now down here, I'm just going to grab our treading water animation, hold down shift to snap it to the left. Grab our swimming animation, shift again, and snap it to our right. And if we hold down our left control key, we can scrub through this little timeline, and we can see it transitioning, or in-betweening or tweening between the two different animations. Hit that save button, close that off, and we can go in and we can set up just how the animation is going to work, or transition between our different states. Now, if you're not 100% certain exactly where your animation blend, so your animation blueprint exists, you can just go find your blueprint for your character, select it under components, make sure you clear your recent search, and we'll see here anim class. This particular one is ABP for animation blueprint, unarmed. I can click this little browse to asset in content browser folder with a magnifying glass. It'll bring it up in our content browser. I can double click on it. Turns out he was under characters, then under inims, unarmed, and that's where he exists for this particular one. Maybe a little bit different for what you've got going on. And again, depends on your version of Unreal Engine, because the prior to 5.6, it was just the one animation blueprint. So here we are. We're going to create a new state. I'm just going to right click, and where we are straight off is under anim graph main states. If you're not there, on the left hand side, you should be able to see a nim graph, which will take you to here, and you have a main states state machine here to double click on. All right, so let's create a state for swimming. Let's right click, add state. We're just going to call it swimming. Pretty self-explanatory. Now we're going to go in and we're going to tell it what animation we're going to play when we enter this particular state. And that's our ABS swimming. So grab it from our asset browser on the right, drag it in, connect it to the result, right click on the speed, and then go promote to variable. And you'll see that it'll pop up in the variable section down here on the left. Let's jump back to main states because we now need to set up how we're going to transition between our locomotion state, our swimming state, and then back from our swimming state back to our locomotion state. Before we do that, let's create a new Boolean. I'm going to try, it'd probably give me an error saying swimming is already used. Yeah, already used. I'm just going to call it swim. And then from locomotion, I'm going to drag to swimming to say create a transition. And then from swimming, I'm going to drag back to locomotion to create another transition. Now, in order to be able to control how we go between the two different states, we have these little buttons here. Sort of reminds me of the New South Wales State Rail Authority logo from back in the day, if you're an Australian. However, I'm just going to click on that, double click, and basically the result states can enter transition. Now the entry transition is pretty straightforward. I'm just going to drag swim straight onto that. And so if swimming is true, then we can enter the swimming state. Come back to the second rule here for swimming to locomotion. Now all we need to do is grab swim. Excuse me, I'll make some move that on. Get swim. Sorry, set swim, not set swim. Apologies. Get swim. I was correct to start with. Drag out of that and search for not bull. So not bull is essentially saying the swimming boolean is false. So we need to exit the swimming state and go back to the locomotion state. Now there's a whole bunch of different things with state machines. Some of this has been recently changed or replaced by the movement library that you can do. However, my belief is if there's an older way of doing it, you should know how to do both ways in case one of those functions breaks. So this is the best way I can show. So this is the way I'm showing. Now we need to be able to determine how that swim boolean is triggered between true and false. So I'm going to come up to our event graph. This is the animation blueprint event graph. We've got a couple of things here already. Now, some people are probably thinking, why did you create a new speed variable when we have a ground speed variable? Well, to be specific, maybe I should have made that speed called swimming speed. So I'm just going to change this to swim speed. Cool thing that should happen with that one, if I go back to my anim graph and check out that swimming state here, it's updated this variable for me. So I don't have to come back here and change anything. Makes life so much easier. So a little bit of housekeeping. I probably should have done that to start with instead of calling it speed. Now add that in. So from our sequence that we have here with everything else, I'm going to add a pin. And you can think of a sequence as a bit of a double adapter or a power board. It'll do index 0, 1, 2, then 3, such that it'll run through it from start to finish. And it's probably that quick that it's not even going to make any difference. You're not even going to notice if it's actually the time it takes. So first of all, I'm just going to copy that movement component. And that is our character movement component. Drag out there, and I'm going to check to see if swimming is enabled. Now, remember when we were in our character blueprint, we added is swimming here. That's where it's pulling that from now. From here, I'm just going to set swimming or swim. Offer this. And then connect our sequence to our set. I'm going to grab a double click on our little wire there to add a reroute node just to make it look nicer. And how about we add a bit of a comment? So set is swimming from the movement components swimming state. Now I'm going to make that a bit longer because we also need to set our swimming speed. In order to do that, we need to cast to our third-person character. So cast to third-person character, if I can spell that correctly. Our object here is going to try get pawn owner. Let me make that comment just a smidge bigger so I can wrap it all up. And then from as third-person character, BP third-person character, we're going to get velocity. Now you will need to scroll down for this one. It's under transformation, and then click on get velocity. From get velocity, we're going to get the vector's length. So drag out from the return value and look for vector length. And that will return a float variable for us to plug in to our swim speed. So we're going to set our swim speed off of the cast and link our vector length into the swim speed. Pretty close. We're not too far from being finished. One more thing that we have to do is we're going to go back to our nim graph and have a look at the control rig side of things. Now, if you're 5.6 plus, and using the control rig 2.0, the IK foot trace pipeline, it's been upgraded. This means that you may need to use a different node name, or you may need to disable it entirely for the swimming states. Just a bit of point of note. I'm going to make some space, make this a bit more logical. I'm going to get my swim and drag it to a not bool. And now I want to disconnect falling with holding out control. I'm just going to right clicking on end bool. So if either of these, so if these are not Boolean, then we should do the IK trace. And that's all we need to do. So we can jump back to our main level, right click, play from here because we don't have a player start. And now when we run into the water, we'll transition to our swim. When we stop swimming, transition into our idle, and now our character can swim. Okay, well, that concludes this particular tutorial. So in conclusion, we have built a complete swimming system from the start to finish. We set up our water body in the level, we fixed its collision so the player can enter it properly, and created custom events in the character blueprint to handle starting and stopping the swimming. We updated our movement input so the character behaves differently in the water. We also connected everything to the water body blueprint so transitions can happen automatically. Then we went in and we built a simple animation system using a blend space, and we added swimming states to our animation blueprint. And finally, we refined the behavior by adjusting collision offset and movement settings so that the character transitions smoothly in and out of the water. With all of this in place, we now have a clean, functional swimming mechanic that you can customize and expand for your own game. That being said, there's 2 points I would like to quickly cover. When you were adding your landscape and the water body, you may have noticed that the landscape had a bit of a divot in the middle of it. This is controlled by the water body's fall-off settings. So if you select water body and go to the details section, in there you will find fall-off settings, and then you will need to modify the edge offset by increasing or decreasing the size depending on your level and how it's set up. It should get rid of any sort of dimples, if you will. Lastly, I'd like to talk about crossing multiple water bodies. For example, if your level has a ocean connected to a river, then into a lake, if your character or player were to try to swim between those water bodies, they would fall out of the water body and walk on the bottom of whatever zone they're currently in. To be able to fix that, I have written an additional paragraph on my guide, which can be accessed on my website. So check out the description for a link to the website. You can also get the animations that I've used in this tutorial. I think there may be a couple of extra ones there as well, all retargeted from Mixer Mode for the Unreal Engine skeleton. Thank you so much for watching this tutorial. Hopefully you're able to get something out of it. Until next time, take care of yourself. Bye-bye now.